Have you ever wondered why we have weekends? Or why your workday isn't 14 hours long? It might seem normal now, but these rights weren't just given to us. They were won often through bitter struggle by ordinary people who dared to demand better. Today, we re-diving into the dramatic and inspiring story of how early labor movements began to transform the American workplace. Picture this. It's the late 19th century. The Industrial Revolution is roaring. Factories are churning out goods at an incredible rate, and cities are exploding in size. From the outside, it looks like a golden age of progress. But for the millions of men, women, and even young children working in these factories, mines and mills, life was anything but golden. Imagine working 12, 14, even 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, in dangerous, unsanitary conditions. Machines had few, if any, safety features. A moment of distraction could cost you a finger, a limb, or even your life. There was no sick pay, no workers' compensation, no retirement, and the pay, barely enough to survive. For many, it felt like a new kind of slavery, where the chains were economic. But in the face of this immense hardship, something incredible began to stir. Workers started talking to each other. In hushed tones at first, then in organized meetings, they shared their stories of exhaustion, injury, and injustice. They realized they weren't alone. They realized that while one worker was powerless, a united group of workers had strength. This was the birth of the American labor movement. One of the earliest and most significant national labor federations was the Knights of Labor. Formed in 1869, unlike many unions of the time, the Knights were incredibly inclusive. They welcomed everyone, skilled and unskilled workers, women, and African Americans, who were often excluded from other groups. Their vision was radical for the time. They didn't just want better wages, they wanted to fundamentally change the system. Their slogan was "An injury to one is the concern of all." They advocated for an 8-hour workday, an end to child labor, and equal pay for equal work. Think about that: equal pay for equal work. A conversation we're still having today was on their agenda over 150 years ago.
Oh.
The Knights of Labor grew rapidly. Reaching over 700,000 members by the mid-1880s, they organized strikes and boycotts, flexing their collective muscle to force employers to the negotiating table. But their rise was met with fierce opposition. Factory owners, backed by private security forces, and often the government itself, saw these unions as a threat to their power and profits. Clashes became common, and sometimes they turned violent. One of the most infamous events from this era was the Haymarket Affair in Chicago in 1886. It started as a peaceful rally in support of striking workers who were demanding an 8-hour day. As the rally was winding down, police moved in to disperse the crowd. Suddenly, someone to this day we don't know who threw a bomb into the police ranks. The police opened fire on the crowd. When the chaos subsided, both police and civilians were dead. The event sparked a wave of national hysteria. 8 anarchists and labor leaders were arrested and convicted of murder despite a lack of evidence connecting them to the bombing. 4 were hanged. The Haymarket Affair was a massive blow to the labor movement, especially the Knights of Labor, who were unfairly associated with the violence. Public opinion turned against them, and their membership plummeted. But the dream of a better workplace didn't die. As the Knights faded, a new organization rose to prominence: the American Federation of Labor, or AFL, founded in 1886 by Samuel Gompers. The AFL had a different strategy. Instead of a broad, idealistic vision for society, they focused on pure and simple unionism, concentrated on bread-and-butter issues: higher wages, shorter hours, and better working conditions. They primarily organized skilled workers, believing they had more leverage against employers. This more pragmatic approach proved to be durable, and the AFL grew to become the dominant force in American labor for decades. Let's talk about some of the people at the heart of these struggles. These weren't just abstract movements. They were driven by real individuals, people like Mother Jones. Mary Harris Jones was a fiery Irish-American schoolteacher and dressmaker who lost her husband and 4 children to a yellow fever epidemic, and then lost all her possessions in the Great Chicago Fire. After these devastating losses, she dedicated her life to the cause of labor. She became a legendary organizer for the United Mine Workers, traveling to coalfields across the country. She was fearless, facing down armed guards and company thugs to rally striking miners and their families. She famously led a children's crusade in 1903. A march of child mill workers from Philadelphia to the home of President Theodore Roosevelt in New York to expose the horrors of child labor. She was a master of public relations, calling herself the Hellraiser and telling workers pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. The struggles were brutal. Take the Pullman strike of 1894. George Pullman, who built luxury railway cars, created a town for his workers just outside Chicago. He owned everything: the houses, the stores, the church. He controlled every aspect of their lives. When a severe economic depression hit, Pullman cut wages by nearly 30%, but he didn't lower the rent or prices in his company town. His workers were being squeezed from both sides. Desperate, they went on strike. The American Railway Union, led by Eugene V. Debs, joined in solidarity, refusing to handle any train with a Pullman car. This act of solidarity brought the nation's rail traffic to a standstill. The response from the federal government was swift and brutal. President Grover Cleveland declared the strike a federal crime and sent in 12,000 U.S. Army troops to break it. The ensuing violence left dozens of workers dead and Debs imprisoned. The strike was crushed, but it highlighted the deep ties between big business and government, and it turned Eugene Debs into a leading socialist figure in America. Despite these violent setbacks, the tide was slowly beginning to turn. These strikes and protests, even when they failed, were impossible to ignore. They dragged the grim realities of the American workplace into the public consciousness. People who had never set foot in a factory began to read about the dangerous conditions and poverty-level wages. Public sympathy began to grow. The tireless work of reformers and muckraking journalists, like Upton Sinclair, whose novel The Jungle exposed the horrific conditions in the meatpacking industry, added fuel to the fire. The idea of the 8-hour day, once a radical dream, started to become a reality. In 1916, under the threat of a national railroad strike, Congress passed the Adamson Act, establishing an 8-hour day for interstate railroad workers. This was a landmark victory. Federal government was finally stepping in to regulate working hours. A few years later, Henry Ford, a man not exactly known for his love of unions, made headlines by instituting an 8-hour day and doubling his workers' wages to $5 a day. He wasn't doing it out of kindness. He astutely calculated that well-paid workers with more leisure time would become consumers who could afford to buy the cars they were making. This was a major turning point. The idea that fair wages and reasonable hours were not just good for workers, but good for business and the economy as a whole, began to take hold. The early labor movement laid the foundation for nearly every workplace protection we have today. It's the concept of a weekend, the 40-hour work week, workplace safety standards, the ban on child labor, and the right to collectively bargain. All of these trace their roots back to those early, brave struggles. It was a long, bloody, and difficult fight, waged by millions of anonymous workers who simply believed they deserved dignity, safety, and a fair share of the wealth they helped create. Their legacy is all around us, in every paycheck, every weekend, and every safety regulation that keeps us safe at work. It's a powerful reminder that progress is never given. It is always won. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to see covered. See you next time.